How effective is the Helios 44 on micro four thirds? Hey, thanks for joining me. Kind of chilly out this morning. Riley and I came downtown to do some testing with this lens. It's like 25 degrees Fahrenheit outside. I think that's like -4 Celsius for everyone that doesn't live in America. And so Riley and I kind of went around and shot some pictures and kind of come back and wanted to talk about this lens. Try to warm up a little bit. So this is a Helios 44. And I've actually had this lens for a long time. I had a customer many years ago brought it to me on this Russian Start camera. The Russian Start is a kind of an obscure Russian SLR that uses this. It has this piece that sticks out kind of like Exacta lenses do, except it's on the other side. The Exacta, this thing sticks out on the left side. And when you push this button, it pushes the button on the camera that makes it take a picture. And also you can see it stops down the aperture. I don't know if you can see that very well. So I've had this lens and didn't really do anything with it. Now I haven't gone out and bought a Helios 44, partly because I kind of knew I had this one. And I've got a Zeiss Biotar, so I really didn't just see the need. And the other day I was looking just out of curiosity on eBay to see if anyone made an adapter for the Start lenses to fit micro four thirds. And sure enough, I found a guy on eBay that he makes some pretty unusual adapters. And they're not expensive. They're like $30 or $35. And I thought about ordering one, and then I found a used adapter in micro four thirds for $15, plus like $6 shipping. So I ordered that. And the Start lens, this is green locking ring. It's kind of like a Canon breech lock lens. It's got a bayonet actually on the lens, and this is the part that receives it. It's locks up very much like the old Canon breech lock lenses does, except that the turning ring is on the camera, or in this case the adapter, rather than the lens. Kind of a weird lens adapter. Now this particular adapter, you can actually loosen this screw and you can screw it in and out from the mount to make it focus closer or to adjust it for infinity focus. And micro four thirds on the back. The adapter works pretty good. So for $15 I thought it was worth giving the lens a try. And so I'm not going to try to do a review on the Helios 44. I think that's been done ad nauseum. I mean, everybody's reviewed the Helios 44. So my intention really here is to say, or ask the question, what utility does the Helios have on a micro four thirds camera? One of the big attractions of the Helios lens is the swirly bokeh, either bokeh or however you say it, the backgrounds that you get when using this. And if you've tried doing this with any kind of camera, with the Helios or any other lens that produces swirly backgrounds, you pretty quickly find out that you got to be at the right distance and focused. You know, there's kind of a ratio between where you're focused and the distance to the background that works the best, and some experimentation is in order. And I played around it with a little bit. We've got a lot of Christmas lights out right now, so I was able to use some of those lights to make, you know, the highlights for the background and play around with this. And one of the things that I didn't realize, that with today's LED, I guess they're LED Christmas lights that we have downtown here, that I would get some banding where the even in the display you could actually see bands moving across or up and down the display. And I'm guessing that these lights, being that they're AC powered and they're LED, they have some, you know, they're flickering on and off. And my camera has some anti-flicker settings, and the default is automatic, and I tried changing it to 60 hertz, which is what the electricity we have here is. That didn't help, or didn't make any difference at all. So I even tried turning that off, that anti-flickering off. The banding is clearly caused by an interaction between the lights quickly flashing 60 times a second and the shutter and the video, you know, the way that the image is created when you're viewing the electronic viewfinder. So kind of an unusual thing. So I had to sometimes take a whole bunch of pictures to find one that didn't have any banding in it, or it was minimal enough that I could illustrate what I found. So it was kind of an interesting thing. I hadn't, to be honest, I mean, I've photographed Christmas lights with digital cameras. Never had run into this before. Maybe it's because I'm real close to them it makes a difference. I don't know. But it was kind of an interesting conundrum to figure out at first. So the Helios 44 is obviously made for a full frame camera. And when you take pictures with this on a full frame camera and you've got your out of focus background and your highlights just right, you can get some really neat swirly effects. One of the things it's really known for. It's also known for its image qualities in general. Sharp in the center, soft kind of towards the edges. I'm talking about when you're shooting this lens primarily wide open. And it's got those really good qualities you want for a vintage look. I know the Helios has become so popular that I think I read online that it was used in a movie, a Batman movie or something. I forget what movie it was now. Anyway, it was used on some movie recently in certain scenes. And I don't even remember which movie it was now. It may not have been Batman, but it doesn't matter. It's become very popular. And it's a lens I really haven't focused on too much, partly because I knew on Micro Four Thirds that it might not be as effective as it is on full frame, and partly because it's just something that's been discussed for, forever from everybody. So, again, how does this work out on Micro Four Thirds? So, if you shoot Micro Four Thirds, obviously that the sensor is much smaller than full frame, and there's this 2x crop factor. So this 58 millimeter lens has, a focal length that's equivalent to 116 millimeter on Micro Four Thirds, and obviously a lot of the good swirly stuff that you see gets cropped out. And so the question is, can you get that swirliness? A, B, does the lens in general have enough good image qualities that would make it a desirable choice for Micro Four Thirds? And I think the answer to that is yes, you lose a lot of the swirliness. Yes, you can still get some, but it's not pronounced as you would see it on a full frame camera. And just like on full frame, there's some experimentation is in order to figure out, what ratio of subject focus versus background distance creates the nicest effect. And depending on the subject you're shooting, you'd have to play around with it some. So it's a great lens. It's nice and sharp in the center. I was kind of surprised at that. It's got the most unusual coating. It's purplish. You can really kind of see the kind of purpley looking coating, and just comparing it to other single coated lenses, it's a really unique coating. I'm not sure what they've done. I don't think I've ever seen a coating that has that look. I mean, it really is purple. You see some that are kind of bluish and some that are kind of brownish, and this one, beyond the color, when you look at it, it has a kind of a unique look. And I thought that maybe that would create some real interesting color effects. And it does seem to, if you get this thing into the sun where it flares a little bit, I was able to get some pretty interesting purple flare out of it. So if you're into creating flare with your lenses, I was using this start version. This early one has a 40.5 millimeter filter thread, which is different than the M42 version, which I think is 49 millimeter. But I happen to have some 40.5 millimeter lens hoods, and so I was able to put a 40.5 millimeter lens hood on it to help reduce some of the flare. When I took the lens hood off, it definitely increased the flare. So if you're shooting one of the Helios and you're wanting to control flare, lens hoods, definitely a good idea. And it's got some really neat image qualities. Like I say, you can get some really creative flare out of it. I think if you're shooting, this one focuses relatively close. It's 0.7. Actually, it goes closer. The last number is 0.7 of a meter, but it actually turns quite a bit past that. And so I was able to get relatively close to some flowers and such, and center sharpness is excellent, even wide open. Stop it down to f8 or so, and you get some, a very nice sharp lens. It's definitely that. So I think it's got definitely some good uses for micro four thirds. Now, all that being said, if I were to want to buy a lens that had good center sharpness, nice soft backgrounds, good for, say, portraiture and some of those things, I might pick a sonar variation like the Jupiter 8. Probably cheaper to get than a Helios 44. Helios 44s have developed pretty strong following these days, and consequently, they're getting a little pricey. I mean, you can quickly spend over $100 on one. Used to be you could get them very cheap. Now, the Jupiters are also relatively popular, but they're so plentiful that you can still get a good Jupiter 8, one of the variations, for $35, $40. They're pretty inexpensive. And of course, they're M39 or like a screw mount. Disadvantage with the sonars, it only focuses down to 1 meter because it was made for a rangefinder camera, and if you want to focus closer, some extension tubes are in order. But all that's pretty easy to solve. The Jupiter is much more compact. So, and if you're not into swirliness, then I would probably go with the Jupiter, just because I think size-wise it's a better fit for micro four thirds. Now, if you're really wanting to get some swirliness, there's some better choices. There's a number of, you need a lens basically that's got a smaller image circle. And the way to do that is with a C-mount movie camera lens. Now, I did a video on the Cooke, it's a Taylor Hobson Cooke Kinnick 1-inch or 25 millimeter f1.5. It's a beautiful lens in terms of swirliness. It just creates some really beautiful effects. I'll put a link in the description for the video on the Cooke Kinnick. The problem with the Kinnick is the one I have actually is not in C mount, it's in like D mount. I found it on a Bell & Howell 16 millimeter camera, and when I bought it, I kind of assumed that being 16 millimeter it would be C mount. Turned out it was smaller, but I was able to take the optics out of the focusing mount, unscrew the mount, they just unscrewed, and I was able to kind of fashion a focusing mount so I could play with it. And it's probably worth me actually working up an actual permanent focusing mount for it. But in all the looking at the Kinnick lenses and stuff, another one I stumbled across is this Bell & Howell 1-inch f1.9 Lumax lens. Kind of like Lumix, but it's Lumax. And it's pretty common lens on Bell & Howell, especially the 16 millimeter magazine cameras, the square ones that used a magazine. I was able to buy one of those cameras with this lens for like $25 or $30, and the lens is in pretty good shape. At f1.9, it is fast enough that you can get some good swirly effects out of it, and it does vignette a little bit more, obviously, because it's got a smaller image circle. The Cooke Kinnick 1-inch f1.5 doesn't vignette near as much. This vignettes more. There is an f1.9 version of the Kinnick that vignettes a lot more, and enough that you'd have to crop significantly to use the lens. But this one, if you're wanting a lens that'll produce some pretty nice swirly effects, these are not too expensive, pretty easy to get. There are some modern CCTV lenses, like some by Fujian. I think they're 25 millimeter and or 35 millimeter. Some of their C-mount movie camera lenses are known for being pretty swirly, and they're not very expensive. You can even buy some of those on Amazon. I'll have to get one someday and test it, but from what I've read, and there's a number of other C-mount movie camera lenses that have a big enough image circle and have the swirly effect. And there's a Wallensack 1-inch or 25 millimeter f1.5, I think it is, that's known for being very swirly. And so if you're after swirl, there's probably, for micro four thirds, there's probably better choices than the Helios. Still, I think it's a fascinating lens. It's got some great image qualities. Let's take a look at some of the images I played around with. I shot some pictures of the Christmas lights and played around with that, and went to this gardens area where Surprise of surprise, there were still a few flowers out, even though it's so cold. I don't know how some of those flowers survive that, but there's some out there, not many, but I was able to take some pictures there also that are kind of interesting. So let me let you take a look at some of these images, and then we'll come back and see what you think about that. Well, I hope you found those interesting. The Helios 44, obviously it's a great lens, got just a huge following. The version I have is a little bit different, being from a start camera. I don't know that I would pursue buying one of these unless you knew for sure you could get the adapter for it. And even then, it's a little bit of a weird lens. If you want to use it stop down, the ring closer to the mount is the aperture, and then this is the focus. If you want to, stop the lens down, then and my aperture is kind of stiff. I guess I probably should take it apart and clean it. You push this button and you can see it stop down, but you can also turn the button and it'll stay stopped down. So you don't have to hold the button down while you use it if you want to do that. One of the things that's weird about mine, you notice that there's one aperture blade that's shiny and the rest are kind of matte or flat black. There's one that's shiny. I'm guessing that either when they assembled it at the factory, there was one blade that wasn't blacked out like the rest and they just didn't care and put it in, or this lens has been repaired at some time and that aperture blade was replaced, maybe because the original was damaged. And all they had was one that wasn't flat black, and so they put it in. So I've got this one aperture blade that's shiny, and the rest are not. It's kind of weird. But it, it's a neat old lens. I'll definitely use it some. I have, like I say, I know some of you have. I've mentioned this before. I've been kind of toying with the idea of getting a full frame camera just for doing some vintage lens testing. Still, I'm really a fan of, I really love Micro Four Thirds. So part of me says, yes, do that. Part of me says, no, spend your money on Micro Four Thirds. So I haven't really decided. But, I think it's definitely, the Helios 44 is definitely a lens worth having. I was lucky to find this one. It's actually the early version that has the 13 aperture blades. So even if you use it partly stop down, you get nice round out of focus highlights. They don't turn into hexagons or whatever. So I know the trend is to use this lens wide open, but if you do want to use it stop down a little bit to maybe get a little bit better image quality and still have some nice out of focus backgrounds, you can do that without getting the odd shaped. Are you in a hurry? Odd shaped backgrounds. Anyway, well, I hope you enjoyed seeing those. I definitely, if I ran across a Helios 44, got a good deal on one, it's definitely a lens I would get, just because of its qualities. I think it's got a lot of good utility. It's very popular for shooting video these days, and it's definitely a lens that's going to give you that, that kind of classic film look, if you're wanting that, especially with shooting video. So definitely would, I wouldn't be afraid to buy one. But like I say, if you want swirliness, there's some better choices in some of the C-mount lenses. And, if you're just wanting something like to take portraits and such with, the Jupiter 8 might be a better choice. And you know, of course, there's a lot of other lenses out there. So anyway, I hope you found some of that at least interesting, if not helpful. If you have any thoughts or questions, please don't hesitate to leave me a comment. I guess I'm going to have to take this dog out again. You got something on your mind there, buddy? He's ready to go do something else. Well, thanks for joining me. I'll talk to you later. See you on the next one.